One recent survey from Represent Us shows 90% of respondents want tougher campaign finance laws. 97% want tougher anti-corruption laws. With us at the table is John Stanton, Washington bureau chief of BuzzFeed, the perfect guy to talk about this crazy story that the cycle team has really been debating, talking about all day long. And it reminds me that politics is a multi-million-dollar game. And you can see this directly in Congress if you look at the reality of 268 lawmakers have an average net worth topping $1 million. That was in the year of 2012. And Campaign for America's Future, I think, puts it perfectly. This is what they write. Wealth is not a qualifier for public service, nor should it be. But it should never be a prerequisite for government service. Unfortunately, in today's cash-driven political system, it usually is. Only the wealthy can afford the time it takes to get elected. Only the wealthy can write the checks that are typically needed to get a campaign started. And only the wealthy have the connections needed to finance a winning campaign. And obviously the McDonald's felt the pressure to live in this glitzy political lifestyle, and one that they clearly could not afford. And obviously that's a separate story, and I think that what they did was wrong. But does this not speak to why other people don't want to get into politics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cost prohibitive for most people, frankly, to run for anything, especially at like at the statewide level or at the national level. It's just not a thing that regular people can do anymore. And unfortunately, I do think that people who are sort of average Americans that get into office, as they get higher and higher, they're around more and more wealthy people. And the level of wealth that they are exposed to, in a lot of cases, I think causes them to become envious. They want it. They want to they'll do whatever they can to get that money, to get that power, to get that wealth. And you start to see things like this. I mean, their behavior is preposterous, right? Even if it was totally illegal, they did nothing wrong, what they did is very unseemly and sort of disgusting, right? You know, like, let's go drive around in this guy's Ferrari. You know? Right. In D.C., we call that being a Bama. That is what these people were, for sure.
Being a Bama?
A Bama. Like, you have no sense. You're a person who has no idea what you're doing, right?
Very true.
This was Bama behavior, right? And I think, you know, but it does, you know, if you're a regular person, you look at this, you're going to say to yourself, I can't run for office. I don't have the wealth or the time or the ability.
Or Rolex.
I think,
or Rolex,
I think we can all agree in the Bama behavior of, you know, if what is alleged is actually the case. But I have been thinking about this. I mean, essentially what they did is they traded personal money for access for this man and his company and for some sort of government goodies, which, other than it being personal money rather than campaign money, is not that different from what essentially every politician does. It's made me think about, and that's, again, not to excuse them. What they did was wrong. It was corruption. It was a violation of the public trust. But it just struck me the operating level of corruption that we accept in our political system on an everyday basis. If it's Lockheed Martin that's giving money into a campaign account with full expectation that they're going to get a vote or access or a project or whatever it is, we look the other way at that.
Well, you know, and Governor McDonnell made the point that, you know, every president would be found guilty of this if you looked at it that way, because you got donors that become ambassadors, things like that.
Right. And
we do draw a sort of an arbitrary distinction between campaign money and personal money, especially on the state level, where candidates and politicians are allowed to use a lot of this campaign money for personal stuff. They can get a car, a driver. They can essentially expense all of their meals to their campaigns, and that becomes, you know, a financial benefit to them that we sort of overlook. You know, and there is a bit of an arbitrary distinction. In this case, again, I think it was just such an outrageous level of you know, stuff that they wanted.
The Oscar de la Renta gowns,
right, you know, and
everything.
Some sweet
I'm not sure I agree with you that this distinction is quite so arbitrary, that campaign finance is meant to deal with you as a candidate and the entirety of the people who work with you to deal with policy, right? And if you become an ambassador, that is you're trying to help forward the policies, right? Maybe in some other country or what have you, but you're working in that administration in a large sense. This is just personally enriching the governor and his wife. And we all agree that that's despicable, but I think there is a fundamental difference between those two things, and it's not an arbitrary thing. And I mean, maybe I'm naive that I don't know of presidents just being given Louis Vuitton handbags and purses and shoes and Oscar de la Renta and on and on and on. For specific gain. Maybe, you know, I know the First Lady has had dresses given to her, but there's not a specific quid pro quo going on there.
No, that is true. And there is a much bigger difference between sort of state level and federal level. If you look at members of Congress, for instance, the rules that govern their use of campaign money are very, very strict, to the point that a lot of them have they just send everything to the Ethics Committee because they are worried about getting in trouble.
Virginia's are exceptionally lax. Yeah.
But at the same time, if you go into federal campaign finance records and you look for Starbucks, you will find that almost every member of Congress and every member of the Senate is spending hundreds or thousands of dollars every year on Starbucks, because they're going every morning and they're buying a Starbucks coffee and they're using their campaign card to buy that. Right. And it's totally legal and it's something that is accepted, and we've sort of decided this is an okay thing for you to do. You're allowed to get some amount of personal gain out of this. And so there is, I think, in that sense, an arbitrary level. Again, nobody's getting Louis Vuitton handbags, and if they are, they're probably going to get in trouble for that. But
and it's a lot more noticeable than a Starbucks cup. Obviously, it's a very gray situation, and there's some underlying issues that we're going to continue to have to figure out over the years. But John Stanton, always great having you at the table. Thanks so much for being here. And up next.